This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Trigger warnings. There may be mentions of abuse, sexual assault, and suicide within this episode. Some elements may be distressing. Listener discretion is advised. And if you need support during or after listening, there are resources in the show notes.
It's not about finding a new purpose. My purpose hasn't changed, just the way that I do it has changed. I can't be a chaplain anymore, and that still breaks my heart every day because I loved doing that role. But I can still talk into people's lives. I can still be all who I have been created to be. It's just I'm going to do it in a different way.
I'm Georgia, and welcome to Finding Hope, the podcast that finds the good in the midst of the bad. Each episode we meet someone who's had a bit of a hard time but has found hope and healing along the way, and hopefully they inspire you to embrace the good in your world too. Episode 37, Mel Baker, Part 4 of 4. Mel Baker. Where do I begin with Mel Baker? Over the past 3 weeks, we have heard of Mel's unimaginable pain, incredible triumphs, and everything in between. If you haven't listened to the previous 3 episodes, go ahead and do that before starting this last one. To recap, Mel's childhood was incredibly hard. Filled with abuse from her father, she ended up on the streets when she was just 16 years old. But when she was 17, her life was changed by one verse in the Gideon Bible. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy ladened, and I will give you rest. From that moment on, Mel was a Christian. She started going to church, went on mission to Papua New Guinea, studied ministry at Morling College, where she got 3 degrees, I might add, and became the 6th female reverend in Baptist Churches, New South Wales. She travelled around the globe, working in aid and development. She worked as a police chaplain and finally as a chaplain in the Royal Australian Navy. Mel loved being in the Navy. It was her dream job. But all that changed when she experienced abuse yet again from a fellow officer. Mel quickly spiralled and eventually was made to take leave for 12 months as she wasn't fit to perform duties. She was at rock bottom. But could Mel rise from the ashes yet again? We're about to find out. Let's get back into it. Let's get situated again. Mel has just had her uniform taken from her for 12 months. During that time, she wasn't able to work in the Navy as an officer, but she was able to work as a civilian, which she did just to be able to pay rent. During this time, she also went through inquiries to try and get some kind of justice.
I went through inquiries and stuff like that, and I kept on trying to not only help myself through this time and try to pick myself up and work out at this point, I know now what happened when I look back in hindsight, but at that point when I hadn't been sleeping and I can't cope with, I'm not eating, I'm not thinking at all. I can't work out. I'll go, I know this happened. I know I was threatened. I know all the bullying was happening and stuff, but why did that create such a mess in my life that it brought me down to that place? I couldn't work it out at that point. But I kept on talking to people. Is this unacceptable behaviour? Is this how someone should be behaving to me? And asking the questions, and everyone was saying, no, this is unacceptable. This shouldn't happen. It should go to inquiry, and it did, and a whole lot of things happened and didn't happen. And in the end, I was blamed. The chaplains department was blamed for putting a new chaplain into a warship that wasn't ready. And that's what happens. They cover things up because that's the easiest way to deal with stuff.
Mel continued to be pushed down, but not defeated. Even though the Navy weren't recognising her abuse, even though she couldn't practice as a chaplain, she still knew who she was.
you can't take the chaplaincy and the ministry out of the person. Like I am who I am. I'm in that role because of my love for people. And then during that time, I was catching up with some people, the submariners, and that was really great. But then one really bad, unfortunate night incident happened where I was meeting up with a sailor who was leaving the Navy, and he wanted to see his old chaplain before he left. Excepting the night didn't go that great, and he sexually assaulted me. And that is so rife in the Navy. But I never thought that would happen to me. I thought I was over all that from my teenage years. I hadn't had any of that happen since back before. And to have that happen again in the Navy, and then have plus on top of those threats and bullying and everything like that, it felt like I was reliving my childhood again as an adult, excepting I'm a little bit more wise and able to a little defend myself more than when I was a child. But it was like I was repatterning the same stuff. And I was like, why? Why do I get this far? I've gone through all the things that I've gone through, and I get to this point where I feel like I have nothing left again, and I have to restart my life. And I couldn't comprehend that at all, like through everything that I've worked through. And I was then back in therapy and they medically discharged me 18 months after.
Medical discharge meant that Mel could no longer work for the Navy in any capacity, even as a civilian, which meant no income.
You know, I was in a rental in Piermont that was over $700 a week, and in the military you get rental allowance, so that would totally go, and I can't afford that on nothing. And so I was just like, how do I do that? And I left and I was homeless. I stayed as long as I could at Piermont, but I couldn't stay. It was about a week. And then I ended up, at least I had my car, so I ended up sleeping in my car for a few weeks. And then I was so fortunate to get a call from Homes for Heroes saying, hey, we hear that you're doing it tough right now. We've got a unit we could give you at Galston in a retirement village, and do you want to come and have a look? And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. Like, how did this happen? And I came under a beautiful man called Adrian, and he ended up being the manager of Homes for Heroes. He was only just starting, sort of like the program hadn't really kicked off yet. And I was the only veteran living in the retirement village, but I felt like this whole beautiful old community of people there who still love me and still contact me were now my family. And it was a double-edged sword being there, because I felt like it was so beautiful, and to have shelter and have my own one-bedroom apartment, it was really like a bed sitter. And that was really great. But at the same time, I'm totally aware of my situation every day, that I'm here and I've got nothing. Everything that I've worked through in life is gone, and I couldn't get that out of my head. It was so tough every day to think that that's where my life had got to in my 40s. And I stayed there for about 13 months until I finally got a Department of Veteran Affairs something through on them. The anxiety was accepted that the Navy had caused that, and then I could start getting some incapacity payments through, and they back paid me. And then I had a little bit of income coming in, so that was got me to be okay, I could move out and have a rental now. And I moved on to a little farm near Galston in Kenthurst as a a granny flat on a 5-acre property. And I had been working with veterans and horses in that year of discharge in 2015 and then 2016. And when I moved out to Kenthurst, I thought, I've got a paddock now I could use. And I had a couple of the horses from the program where the horseman, Scott Brady, he came and brought over horses he needed to sort of were injured or unable to be trained right now. So they became my friends, and I was in a healing place. I tried a PTSD dog and I just couldn't cope without any support. I couldn't cope with a 24/7 dog leash to me, even though I needed that companion so much. But I found horses I could go. It gets me up in the morning. I go and feed them, and I can get to a place where I could just sit, go and groom them and feel better. Yeah, my days were brighter in those times. I just felt, and that really brought me to the present moment as well, rather than focused on the depression of the past or the anxiety of the future. I was able to really hone in on just being present is all I need to be today. And that saved me a lot through those years. I was really quite still traumatized and still trying to work out everything and in and out of hospital all the time. And because they only reacted to things and I never really had that proactive treatment. And so I was far behind. And then my body was so stressed from everything, and that I started to form a inflammatory arthritis that I've still got today. And so all the inflammation started to eat away at all the goodness in me. And my knees then started to be knocked in, or my cartilage is gone from the lateral sides of my knees. So my knees are knocked. I can hardly walk. I live with chronic pain every day. And dealing with that physical health with the mental health as well on top of that, it was just another thing like I have to deal with because of the stress and trauma. And then I'm still can't sleep on my own since those incidents happened in the Navy. Even now, can't sleep on my own. I have all the peace in the world now, but I still just can't sleep without a tablet.
Despite everything, her pain, insomnia, losing her career, Mel was happy as she could be. And she learnt a very important lesson during that time.
I learnt to love myself for the first time. And I think I had a belief in myself, and I had confidence back in my 20s and 30s in how I approached everything and determined and resilient. And I still had that when I went into the Navy. I had full confidence, but that was totally blown out of me. From all what happened in the Navy, it's just my confidence was shattered. So my belief in self was shattered. I went down into a low self-worth again. And then out of that, it was like, hang on, have I ever really loved myself? I don't think we talk about that enough in churches and communities. I certainly grew up on the belief that we have to give everything to everybody else, but it's not about selfishness or about that. It's to love yourself and to accept who you are gives you all the foundation that you need in order to care for others. And I think I really saw that everything that I gave to everyone else all my life was a detriment to myself, because I really wasn't self-caring and nurturing myself in order to give. I was giving out of my love and my experiences, but I was also in some ways giving out of emptiness. And so in that emptiness, I started to feel just that being present how I think God really wanted us to live life, is to be present in the moment. Don't worry about the future. Allow the future to happen as it is. But today is the day that we need to focus on. And to give everything that we need to into the day is about really finding and nurturing ourselves and then giving out of that. And so I learned that for the first time. This has been 5 years of hard labor, I tell you, to every day to try to find something. And then 2019 came, and 4 years after the discharge, I started to see a little bit better. I opened my eyes to where I had gone through. I understood what I had lived through now. I could even understand the whole of my life trauma at that point because of what I've worked through. And I could see now, okay, I'm rebirthing out of my lived experiences again. It's not about starting again. It's a rebirthing and transforming myself into another place. And I came to the place where but my purpose has always been from that, time when I was 17, that it's always been about reaching out and helping other people to be the best they can be. And in that time of those 4 or 5 years, I was sort of like, well, I got to build myself to be the best I can be. And then I thought, it's not about finding a new purpose. My purpose hasn't changed. Just the way that I do it has changed. I can't be a chaplain anymore, and that still breaks my heart every day because I loved doing that role. It was everything to me. But at the same time, I can still talk into people's lives. I can still be all who I have been created to be. It's just I'm going to do it in a different way.
As soon as Mel came to that realisation, her world began to open up again as she imagined a new reality for herself.
I was getting back into speaking engagements, getting back into writing, getting back into my art and expressing myself to help people through trauma. And I thought, well, okay, I've got an adult education postgraduate degree. I've got all the qualifications for that. I don't think I could work for anybody anymore. I don't think I could go into a full-time job because of my health conditions, but I can still give into that. And from my experiences from childhood and adulthood all the way through my life, what have I learned? How to live through trauma. And I thought, I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm a trauma adult educator. And it's really about speaking into people's lives from the experience. And I started a podcast on LivingWell Talks to really do that. I go through an experience and I talk about what that experience is, and I hope that if it helps one person, then I've done everything I can. And then I started a Living Expressions publication, and I started using all my graphic art skills and everything that I've built up in life and writing things and getting other people to contribute that. And I put those publications free into mental health clinics, hospitals, psychologists' hands to encourage anyone who picks it up. But after 2 years of doing that through COVID, it was getting a little bit too pricey for me to continue. And I turned it into a podcast because it was easier. So I do it as monologues of moments, of living expression moments, and people can do their own monologues, and I put them up as well. And I just do it when I can. And if I'm having a bad day, I focus on me and focus on what I need to nurture in me. And then that I know will give me the energy to do what I need and what I want to do into speaking into other people's lives. So I feel like now I'm reliving my purpose.
2 podcasts, LivingWell Talks and Living Expressions. You can find all of those details in the show notes. And not only that, but Mel has just published a book called Sleeping Under the Bridge, the first in a trilogy about her life.
The writing process is definitely healing in many ways. It's also traumatizing in some ways because I'm very visual, and I as a photographic memory in the visual, I actually go back and place myself. So in writing Sleeping Under the Bridge, I was placing myself in those moments, and what was I feeling at the time? What was I thinking? What can I write about? So getting that really true sense of where I was. And that's the most authentic way that I could tell my story. And it's the same when I share my story. If I'm talking about it anywhere and speaking engagements, then I'm visualizing it as I'm speaking. But I'm able, I think because of my past, to really cut myself off from some of those emotions as I'm talking about it to get through. Even though in reliving it, I'm starting to heal my unconscious thoughts of it and in bringing it to the conscious and seeing how far I've come. So because I'm an optimistic and positive, I look at that and, whoa, how can I, now that I've written that, and then you see where I've come from. And I think, wow, well, I could achieve anything really. And that helps me to keep going. Plus all the inspirational encouragement things that I get along the way, knowing that someone has read my story or heard it and that's encouraged them in some way. That's all I need to know, is that what I'm doing is worth it.
And it is worth it. Mel is sharing her story in all different ways. Short films, podcasts, books, blog posts. She's also a trauma advocate for St John of God Hospital. Her story is out there, and it's changing lives. Mel is living a life of purpose, but it's not without grief. Grief from all that was taken from her as a young child, but also grief of recent loss, including that of her adopted dad just a few weeks ago, who Mel had known and loved for 21 years.
It was so hard a moment. I felt like I had lost everything again. But then over the last couple of weeks of grieving and reading some of his beautiful wisdom and carrying that with me, I like things like he said to me, you don't have to be strong, Mel. You only have to be human. And I think I always needed to be reminded of that because I kept on pushing myself to such a huge level beyond sometimes of what my limitations. And then in hearing that, I've been carrying that wisdom from him for every day for the last couple of weeks. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to be human today. I'm not going to attend a workshop because I need to grieve. I need to just be home and allow myself to go through these heavy emotions. And that was okay. I don't think I've ever actually done that in my life. I think I've always given it everything, I've got this commitment, so therefore I have to do it. I can't pull out. But it was actually so much better for me and probably better for them because I wouldn't have given much into the workshop because I needed to have that time to find me again in that loss. And I came out the other side only a few days ago, thankful, so grateful that I had a second chance of knowing what a father would be like, a good father. One that loved me, adored me, gave me anything that I needed at any point as an adult, and I had 21 years of it. Who gets a second chance of that in life when your blood family wasn't the greatest? And I've transformed out of my grief to, I don't think I've reached acceptance yet, but I've transformed it to that he's with me all the time. Huge hole in my life, I feel now, but just grateful that I've had those years.
An incredible woman, an incredible story. And Mel is only just getting started. She sees her life and everything she's been through as a blessing, giving her a reason to carry on.
It wasn't too far away. Time I was 18, I was like going, I know what my purpose is. I'm alive for a reason. The only reason why I've had more than 9 lives. By then, I've had way more lives than after that. But the reason why I'm alive today is to inspire hope into people's lives. Everything that I do is going to be about supporting, encouraging, empowering others in whatever I can through my story, through being alongside people, anything that I can to support them. And mainly because I don't want anyone to go through what I've gone through. But if I can help them also get through the trauma and get through what they've lived through as well, then I'm alive for that reason.
Thank you so much to Mel Baker for sharing the final part of her incredible story. Personally, I feel like this is one of the most important stories I've ever had the privilege to share. So I want to thank Mel for her vulnerability, courage, and patience over multiple recording sessions. Mel has written a book about her life. It's the first in a trilogy. It's called Sleeping Under the Bridge, and you can find more details in the show notes. And if you need support after listening to this episode, Lifeline is available on 13 11 14. And if you or someone you know has been impacted by sexual assault, domestic or family violence, call 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732 or visit 1800respect.org.au. And both of those resources are also in the show notes. I'm Georgia, and thank you for listening to this episode of Finding Hope. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can send me an email, a review, or share it with your friends. Stories are always better when they're shared, and you never know what you can learn from someone else's journey. And if you or someone you know has a story of hope to share and you'd like to be interviewed for the podcast just like Mel, I would love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the Finding Hope page at hopepodcasts.com.au. For now, I'll leave you with this verse. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. John 16, verse 33. Catch you next time.
This is a Hope 1032 production. Thanks for listening.